And now let me invite the Honorable Minister in the Ministry of Local Government and Regional Development, the Honorable Anand Persaud.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, before I begin my budget presentation this afternoon, I would like to respond to the three words that the honorable member David Patterson ended with: better must come. Let me inform this honorable House, Mr. Speaker, that the best is on the side led by Mohammed Irfan Ali. Mr. Speaker, and I quote, "Then the Lord said to me, the prophets are prophesying lies in my name. I have not sent them or appointed them or spoken to them. They are prophesying to you false visions, divinations, and idolatries, and the delusions of their own minds." Quote from the Holy Bible, Jeremiah chapter 14, verse 14. Mr. Speaker, that is how I would characterize the opposition's lackluster and weak budget presentations. I have been listening day after day, and it seems to me like they are singing the same busted rhythm and record. Mr. Speaker, budget after budget, and it's the same old recycled arguments on a new paper to capture headlines and cheap political points. Mr. Speaker, these honorable men and women come to the House and seek to unjustly criticize this budget when they have not done any preparations. Mr. Speaker, the PNCR, APNU AFC, opposition is a stranger to the truth. They are, like the verse in Jeremiah, false prophets who only seek to preach unto the people false visions and delusions of their own minds. Mr. Speaker, the opposition members were elected not to grandstand and oppose the budget for opposing sake. We have sat and listened to some of the most strange, ignorant, and visionless debates about Budget 2025 from the APNU AFC parliamentarians. Their remarks have been illogical and ravenous, failing to recognize the tangible benefits of Budget 2025. The only exception, Mr. Speaker, has been the Honorable Mrs. Geeta Chandan Edmond. Mr. Speaker, through you, I want to say to this honorable member, Mrs. Chandan Edmond, it was a wise person who said, "It is better to walk alone than follow a crowd going in the wrong direction." Mr. Speaker, I have participated in budgets for 2020, 2021, 22, 23, and 2024. It bothers me that the members on that side fail to comprehend the tremendous impact these budgets have had on the livelihoods of our people. Something is wrong here, Mr. Speaker. It's as if they are completely oblivious to the fact that ordinary citizens are benefiting from these developments. Mr. Speaker, the people of Guyana can attest to this. Mr. Speaker, after all, the speakers from the opposite side of the House can try to save face, but I can foresee that 99% of them will not be here for Budget 2026, including the Honorable Opposition Leader Aubrey Norton. They are nothing more than seat warmers. Mr. Speaker, this is an election year. Maybe the Honorable Member Norton and his seat-warming crew, minds are elsewhere. They might be obsessed with orchestrating a plan or plot to attempt to rig the 2025 elections. Mind you, we are still awaiting for the APNU AFC to present their SOPs. Mr. Norton, Honorable Member, we and the whole world are still awaiting on you and the AFC to produce your statements of poll. 5 years is not enough time to prove the PNC, APNU, AFC was cheated. Don't be like the prophet Jeremiah described in that quote. Either prove your word has value or zip it. Mr. Speaker, we are still waiting on Mr. Ramjatan, the honorable member, to report and prove that Russians were attempting to meddle in the elections. Mr. Speaker, it was at earshot, the raucous and fish market-like presentations of the honorable opposition members Jarita Fanans, Nima Flu Bess, Amanza Walter Desir, Chronicle fraudster Shera Duncan, dishonorable UG fraudster, I'm referring to the honorable Ganesh Mahipal. They come here to bring us the tales of untruthful stories of their phantom people who they have claimed that they visited and consulted about the budget. Mr. Speaker, let me tell you what the ordinary, real folks are saying about the budget. A student, Sheena Williams, said, and I quote, "This budget certainly has goodies for me. It has the right measures and fiscal policy that will take Guyana forward. I do not think the PNC or AFC or APNU AFC would have done so well." Mr. Speaker, a construction worker, Mr. Dave Persaud, said, "A lot of people are happy right now. We will have a better future with this budget." A housewife and mother of three, Angela Scipio, she said, Mr. Speaker, "I am thankful because I have 3 children, and the money will help me to send them to school and look after my family." Mr. Speaker, these are just 3 examples. There are countless persons throughout Guyana who are praising the PPPC government for Budget 2025, which provides these incentives that can lead to household prosperity. Mr. Speaker, the opposition members seem to be good at criticizing, but where are the recommendations? They would have been more effective if they had examined the estimates of Budget 2025 in a holistic and macro way. After all, it was the opposition leader, Mr. Norton, who said in a 𝐃𝐄𝐁 News article dated January 18th, 2025, that this budget is garbage. This is disrespectful, myopic, and unbecoming of an opposition leader who aspires to someday lead our country. This is even more disrespectful to the Guyanese people. But instead of giving credit where credit is due or acknowledging the sound fiscal plans laid out for the year 2025, the honorable opposition members come to this House telling us tales laced with a healthy dose of fiction, half-baked stories, concocted fantasies, and manufactured narratives. Mr. Speaker, they have brought nothing of substance and value to this debate. Mr. Speaker, it was heart-wrenching to know that the APNU AFC regime crippled the sugar industry by shutting down 3 sugar estates and displaced over 7,000 workers, which affected in excess of 32,000 persons indirectly. Mr. Speaker, it was the PPPC government who restored workers' dignity, decency, and pride. Sugar, like rice, like bauxite, are important commodities in sustaining the Guyanese economy. Mr. Speaker, much has been said in this House by the opposition that over the years the PPPC government has wasted monies in resuscitating the sugar industry. Mr. Speaker, regardless of what the opposition said here in the Parliament, sugar will become profitable. It will not fail. Sugar is too important to fail, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, Mr. Speaker, I wish to laud the Minister of Finance for his allocation of $13.3 billion this year for the continued progress and mechanization which will definitely change the future of the sugar industry. Further, Mr. Speaker, I wish to laud the injection of $430.9 million allocated to the rice industry and $2.9 billion for other crops to support agricultural expansion. Mr. Speaker, I now shift my attention to the taxation of the previous regime, which implemented a slew of tax measures, double them on the hard-working Guyanese population. These include a variety not limited to water and electricity bills, motor vehicle registration increased, taxes on agricultural machinery, machinery for mining, VAT on pharmaceutical, VAT on used tires, new fare structures for huskers, educational material, data all increased. Mr. Speaker, to add insult to injury, I believe they even introduced license for horse carts, donkey carts, dog licenses, chicken license, bicycle license, VAT on toothpick, and VAT on baby foods. Mr. Speaker, their tax measures covered from cradle to grave. But we in the PPPC government will take care of our people from cradle to grave with zero taxes, increase in taxes. Importantly, Mr. Speaker, not forgetting the attempted larceny of the $18 million signing bonus, which they claimed they thought was a gift. Mr. Speaker, I can now go on listing almost every scandal during the APNU AFC time in office, but I will not, save for time. Mr. Speaker, I now wish to refresh the minds of all Guyanese who suffered immensely under the PNC regime of rigged elections. In excess of 3 decades, to be precise, 33 years, the PNC and APNU-AFC rigged elections to stay in power. Undemocratic executive lawlessness, highway banditry, barefaced thievery, subversion of our constitution, moral and fiery destruction of our economy, and to recall their words, slow fire, more fire, lack of democracy, and holding on to power at all costs. Mr. Speaker, the Guyanese people were morally reduced to a state of submission. Mr. Speaker, how can I and the people of Guyana forget the opposition's agenda in rigging countless elections? It is obvious that rigging of elections is in their DNA. The elections of 1953 was the first free and fair election won by the PPP. In 1964, elections were won by the PPP, but the PNC coalesced with the UF forming the government. Every other would be rigged. The rigging architects of the PNC created phantom voters, fake lists, fake overseas voters, voter impersonation, hijacking of ballot boxes, flaws with the Electoral Commission and its personnel, thuggery, protests, political killings, etc. Mr. Speaker, this was how the rigging DNA evolved. Mr. Speaker, people were denied basic food items such as flour, split peas, cooking oil, sardines, potatoes, and if caught, can be jailed. Mr. Speaker, there are serious consequences when elections are rigged. It resulted in undemocratic rule which drove our country into bankruptcy and crippled essential services. After lobbying the world leaders for free and fair elections, in 1992, the PPP marked the return of democracy to Guyana and the beginning of a new era. Mr. Speaker, the People's Progressive Party Civic toiled to bring Guyana back, build Guyana strong, restore pride and hope in our people, and champion the good governance structures and institutions up to 2015. Mr. Speaker, a strategy had to be conceptualized to put Guyana back on the developmental path. While this reconstruction was ongoing, Mr. Speaker, the political opposition was undermining in making life hard, miserable, and Guyana ungovernable through street protests, which led to the burning of businesses, government institutions, including schools, looting of stores, and beating up on Guyanese people. Mr. Speaker, I now turn to the 5 dark years. The 2015 to 2020 period. In 2015, they formed a government and occupied executive office, the PPPC department. APNU-AFC immediately brought economic hardships to these shores. On the 21st of November, 2018, the Honorable Dr. Barajagdev, now Vice President, led a successful no-confidence motion against the APNU-AFC regime. They were defeated hands down, and in accordance with the Constitution, the government had fallen, and elections were to be held in 90 days. Mr. Speaker, this turned into the darkest period in our country's history. The authoritarian APNU held Guyana hostage with a heavy feat on the necks of our people and overall the nation. Mr. Speaker, Guyana was under undemocratic rule as the PNCR, APNU AFC were slumbering illegally in office. During the said period, the APNU AFC was planning the rigging of the general and regional elections. Mr. Speaker, this APNU AFC, the sanctimonious gangsters, tried to steal our freedom, elections,
Mr. Speaker,
and democracy in broad daylight.
Mr.
That
Speaker,
is their legacy.
I rise, Mr. Speaker, to
Mr.
bring...
Speaker,
Honorable Minister, I have the Honorable Member, Ms. Ferguson, on her feet.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I stand on Standing Order 41 that refers to content of speech. You would recall, Mr. Speaker, that a list of unparliamentary words were circulated as a reminder. The Honorable Member just made reference to gangsters. Just use the words gangsters in reference to the opposition.
Upheld.
Thank you very much.
Honorable Minister, you'll have to withdraw that.
He's so uninspiring.
I withdraw, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I have articles and documents that talk about the rigging and electoral theft that took place in this country. As warned in the good book, Mr. Speaker, all Guyanese must remain vigilant and not get excited about the unrealistic and irrational promises, as the Vice President Barra Jagdeo put in his article dated January 28, 2025. Mr. Speaker, after the no confidence motion, the election of 2020, this morphed into dark period in our country's history. Mr. Speaker, the PNC APNU AFC government failed on constitutional reform, education, national security, public infrastructure, health, finance, and agriculture. Mr. Speaker, let us review the achievements and outline what we propose to do in Budget 2025. We have already increased salaries and wages, doubling it by 46%. We have increased the income tax threshold. Mr. Speaker, 9 billion will go towards the cushioning the effects of cost of living this year, in addition to countless measures that we have already pursued. Roll back the taxation policy of the APNU AFC government, double old age pension, restore the children cash grant, bringing it to 50,000 per year, created over 50,000 jobs, new and part-time, distribute over 30,000 scholarships to the Guyanese people, made University of Guyana tuition free, writing off millions of dollars in student loans, reform and introduce new local content legislation, strengthen laws and ROPA to deal continuously with threats to our electoral freedom, revolutionize the oil sector, bringing sweeping changes. Mr. Speaker, a 10,000 universal health voucher for each Guyanese will be rolled out this year. Mr. Speaker, a historic 100,000 cash grant for every newborn, which will commence in 2025. Mr. Speaker, another $100,000 is budgeted for every Guyanese over 18 to help secure their future, which has already commenced. Mr. Speaker, this is just the beginning. The PPPC government is committed to building a prosperous future for all. Mr. Speaker, Under the APNU AFC government, 1,972 community service officers were dismissed, leaving those Amerindian youths without employment. In stark contrast, the PPPC government has not only revived this vital program, but has expanded it, employing 2,759 CSOs to date. These young people have now empowered with valuable skills in tourism, garment manufacturing, small engine repairs, ICT, solar installation, and farm equipment operation. Mr. Speaker, with an investment of almost $12 billion from 2020 to 2024 under the Amerindian Development Fund, we have made youth empowerment a top priority. This initiative has restored hope, ensured that Amerindian villages continue to thrive with dignity and purpose. Let us not forget, Mr. Speaker, that this government has also allocated over $27.1 billion in direct support to Amerindian communities, transforming lives through education, transportation, agriculture, cultural preservation, and by encouraging Amerindians to actively participate in these economic programs. Mr. Speaker, under the previous APNU AFC administration, not only were the Amerindian communities neglected, but the entire country was left economically bankrupt. Guyana economy was in shambles, with no clear vision for growth or development. The previous government failed to provide the leadership and foresight needed to move this nation forward. Further, Mr. Speaker, I wish to highlight that $91.5 million has been invested in women-centered projects, further demonstrating our commitment to fostering inclusive growth and development across all sectors. Mr. Speaker, in every one of our budget presentations, we have created the fiscal space for Guyanese to benefit overall, who are, of course, our friends, families, and favorites, including you, the members of the opposition. This government's priority has always been to ensure that all Guyanese share in our growing prosperity. Mr. Speaker, I will now illustrate how Budget 2025 unfolds. Roads and bridges, $209 billion for the commencement of work on the new Quarantine Bridge and the ongoing expansion of the Linden to Mabura Highway. Health, $143 billion for 6 regional world-class hospitals, along with the state-of-the-art pediatrics and maternity hospital at Ogle. Air transport, $7 billion for the construction of a new world-class terminal at Cherry Jagan International Airport and rehabilitate hinterland airstrips. River transport, $9 billion for the construction and rehabilitation of stellings and ferries. Police, $34.4 billion for the advancement of works on a model state-of-the-art police training academy, the construction of Brickdam Police Station, and the construction of several police stations and outposts countrywide. Solid waste for the $13.2 billion for the investment in new landfill sites, compactor trucks, mini excavators, and a hazardous waste cell. Water, $23.1 billion for several new water systems and wells. Human services, $58.5 billion ongoing support for senior citizens, including subsidies for water, electricity, and along with the construction of a new facility for the elderly. Energy, 88 billion for the completion of phase 1 of the 300 megawatt gas to energy project, expanding the renewable energy initiative countrywide. Housing, 112.6 billion, with over 40,000 house lots already distributed, with 25 house lots for additional distribution. This will surpass our manifesto promises made, promises delivered. 175 billion for education. The education of our children is our top priority. Several initiatives are underway, including the expansion of the National School Feeding Program and the provision of reading and workbooks for nursery schools, along with textbooks for primary and secondary schools. Agriculture, 104.6 billion to enhance food production and to sustain food productivity for local and export markets. Mr. Speaker, those were just a few of the big ticket items in Budget 2025. Mr. Speaker, I've heard on many occasions opposition members speaking how we cannot eat roads. And that's a fact. That's a fact, Mr. Speaker. But let me enlighten the opposition members and the naysayers that the building of roads and bridges connects people and goods, which drives economic growth and development. It provides access to essential services. It serves as a lifeline. So we are building out our country's infrastructure and laying the foundation for generations to come. I now turn to local government and regional development. Mr. Speaker, in 2025, all local democratic organs will continue to get enhanced support, which is aimed at creating unified and strong community-oriented bodies that respond to the needs of the people. Isn't that what we're here for, Mr. Speaker? The construction of markets, providing financial support through subventions, and ongoing support for the Community Enhancement Workers Program and the National Pathway Program. Additionally, we will further support investing in a number of garbage compactor trucks, mini excavators, strengthening the local democratic organs. Mr. Speaker, there is no doubt in my mind, or even the mind of every objective, non-partisan, and non-biased Guyanese, that this year's budget is progressive, pro-working class, pro-private sector, pro-poor, realistic, and people-centered. Mr. Speaker,
Mr. MP, you will need an extension to continue.
Mr. Speaker, humbly request that the Honorable Speaker be given 5 minutes to complete his
Thank you, Honorable
presentation.
Minister Warren. Honorable Minister Persaud, you can continue.
Mr. Speaker, Budget 2025 is the embodiment of carefully crafted policies and projects to continue our brisk and bold agenda for the transformation of our economy. Mr. Speaker, what good is sight without vision? It seems to me that those on that side of the House are lacking of both. Mr. Speaker, the PPPC government is creating an environment where young people and Guyanese of all ages can work hard, attain their dreams, and accomplish their visions. Mr. Speaker, In the words of President Barack Obama, and I quote, "A budget is more than a series of numbers on a page. It is an embodiment of values." That's correct. So, Mr. Speaker, this budget 2025 is a budget with promises, values, and a commitment to the Guyanese people. It is not an election year budget. Therefore, there is no election gimmick. What you see is basically what the Guyanese people deserve at this time in our history. Mr. Speaker, this budget prepares all of Guyana to benefit from a reduction in electricity prices by 50%. This PPPC government is a caring government. We will remove all bridge tolls at the new Demerara Harbor Bridge, Wisma Bridge, the Berbice River Bridge, benefiting, according to Budget 2025, over 50,000 daily commuters. Mr. Speaker, on this side of the House, we don't just talk about achievements. We demonstrate them through actions. That's correct. This budget is proof of our unwavering commitment. And under the PPPC government, we will not only meet but exceed every promise made. We are fully committed to ensuring the success of this budget and securing the prosperity of every Guyanese. The rapid growth and development we are experiencing today is a direct result of the PPPC's dedication to good governance. In sharp contrast to the APNU AFC, which was defined by bad governance that stagnated growth and destroyed the economy, we are now democratically guiding this country towards a prosperous and sustainable future. Mr. Speaker, a tree is known by its fruit. Therefore, a person can be judged by the results of their actions. Judge the People's Progressive Party Civic by our track record. I project 2025 will be no different because we have the winning SOPs. Mr. Speaker, please permit me to offer my sincere congratulations to the senior minister within the Office of the President with responsibility for finance and public service, Dr. Ashni Kumar Prince, and his competent staff for the stellar performance in the sector and bringing this PPPC budget to this assembly. Now, let's get down to business. As I commend this budget to this House. Mr. Speaker, Guyana has become a nice place. Guyana is a nice place. And Guyana is a nice, nice place. I thank you. Wonderful.